Grand Rising everybody, and welcome to my channel. Today I'd like to talk about an email I received in response from the government to a petition that I signed entitled "Make all forms of geoengineering affecting the environment illegal." This is what the government has to say. Government responded: greenhouse gas removals are important for achieving net zero emissions. The government is not in favour of using solar radiation modification and has no plans for deployment, which is blocking out the sun. Funny that, because in recent weeks the press, the mainstream media, has done nothing but report that this is what the government is planning to do, even though a lot of us know that they've already been doing it. So this feels an awful lot like gaslighting. I mean, who's telling the truth here? The media or the government? Neither of them, perhaps. But anyway, there's a certain amount of gaslighting because the mention of solar radiation modification is mentioned in the preamble of this petition. Making Britain a clean energy superpower is one of the 5 missions of the government, delivering clean power by 2030 and accelerating to net zero across the economy. Well, what are the others? And I would kind of beg to differ. What's more important, this net zero malarkey or the health and welfare of the British people? It doesn't, to me, seem like the government have their priorities in the right stable. The government's priority is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from human activities and to adapt to the unavoidable impacts of climate change. Well, I must also add that climate is and has been cyclical for many hundreds of thousands of years, and periodically the climate will change. It's a known fact. That's why we've had ice ages and the fall of the dinosaurs, because the climate changed naturally before man or machines or anything of that nature. But we must ask the question, if there is any climate change, how much of that has been instigated by man and his big machines? And for all this net zero talk, it's really about, is it not, preventing the minions from fully enjoying themselves when those who make the rules still fly off on the jet plane. And if we had such a crisis, surely the jet plane would be safely in the airplane hangar. Or am I wrong here? Geoengineering is a term commonly used to refer to 2 types of technologies: greenhouse gas removals, GGRs, and solar radiation modification, SRM. GGR technologies will be important for reaching net zero. Balancing residual emissions from hard to decarbonise sectors as recognised by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change and the UK's Independent Climate Change Committee, which are big business driven. And yes, the WEF has a certain amount of input in this, as does a certain individual called Gil Bates, MD. There are commercial scale GGR projects operating and being planned around the world. The thing is though, if you get rid of all your power, nuclear power stations or whatever forms of energy, you have natural gas and forms of electricity. On a still day, where's the power going to come? The wind farm isn't going to be doing much when the weather is nice and calm, which makes me think as well, is that also behind the need for geoengineering to try and stir up the climate to get these solar and wind farms to work the way they want to. There's certainly, to me, a hidden agenda, but you tell me what you think. GGR approaches fall broadly into two categories: nature-based approaches such as afforestation and soil carbon sequestration, and two, engineering-based approaches such as direct air carbon capture and storage, bioenergy with carbon capture and storage, carbon in building materials, biochar and enhanced rock weathering. But to the ordinary layman or woman, that doesn't really make much sense. Nature-based methods can play an important role in removing and storing carbon dioxide at scale, while delivering a range of additional environmental benefits such as biodiversity gain, air quality and soil health. Is that why then they're pulling trees down and feeding cows who produce very, very, very little carbon, methane reducing substances, and making them sick? And surely that will filter down through the food chain and help to make us sick too. However, due to factors such as land constraints and timescales for sequestration, the evidence demonstrates that nature-based GGRs must be complemented by engineered solutions to remove carbon dioxide at the speed and scale needed to meet our targets which in my mind are completely unachievable. And it's terrible in the UK how thousands of acres of prime farmland are being turned into solar farms covered in panels fabricated in China. What happens to the biodiversity, the creatures and the animals and the insects who have been living and thriving on aforementioned agricultural land? What happens to them? And what happens to the food that is put on our table? We already import something like 70% of our foodstuffs. So how is that going to make us more self-sustainable? Surely a good approach to climate change, if there is any climate change, would be to ensure that we grow and use more of our own stuff instead of exporting it. We have everything we need to sustain ourselves, and to destroy or send it elsewhere, to me, is a travesty. We should be able to look after ourselves, and in that way farm and grow food with nature and the seasons in mind. In February, the government announced an independent review to consider how GGRs can assist the UK in meeting our net zero targets out to 2050. The review is not centred on any particular project and will consider all GGRs with a focus on engineered GGR approaches. The review's findings will be published. Don't think many people in the UK are going along with this net zero stuff now. A lot of us, more and more I see on social media in particular, as well as those I meet in the street, are completely turned off to it. They sense that there's something more at play here than just how we look after our planet. To me, as a follower of a natural life, that is what is lacking. There's not enough ways being implemented to look after the land in a natural way and respect the land and Mother Nature in general, and also respect the people as well as all the creatures who live upon it. The government supports the deployment of high integrity removals and has committed to ensuring that GGRs provide measurable and verifiable removals of CO2 from the atmosphere. What on earth is a high integrity removal? I'll put something on the screen. The government is currently working with the British Standards Institution to develop GGR methodologies. Some GGR technologies may use sustainable biomass and relevant GGR standards will also include biomass sustainability criteria. These criteria will build on the existing sustainability criteria for biomass to ensure they are based on the latest evidence base. The government plan to consult on the details of the sustainability actions set out in the biomass strategy published in 2023. Well, what are these standards? What are these criteria? It's all very well saying that they exist, but what are they? How many of us have a crystal ball? How many of us are able to or want to practice telepathy 24/7? In March 2023, the government committed to launch a process to expand the Track 1 carbon capture usage and storage clusters, HyNet and East Coast clusters. What is that? Again, I'll put something up. You know, I hate all this terminology. It means nothing. I'm all for plain speech. Are you? I think most people are. It helps us to understand things better. But again, maybe that's why they do it. They don't want us to. As of spring 2024, the Track 1 expansion HyNet process allows GGR and power bioenergy with carbon capture and storage projects to apply to the expansion of the HyNet cluster in the northwest. HyNet cluster? What's a HyNet cluster? Again, I will put something up above. Applicants for Track 1 expansion HyNet were expected to complete an Environment Agency Guidance Annex as per the application guidance published in December 2023. This annex provides environmental considerations likely to be relevant to projects and steps they may need to take in relation to obtaining permits and consents. So what are these environmental considerations? A statement doesn't explain. The Environment Agency guidance aids the identification of key environmental risks associated with proposals and helps applicants to demonstrate awareness of potential control measures and environmental standards and regulations, which we still don't know what they are, for the areas of risk that may be relevant to proposals. SRM describes a set of technologies that could theoretically cool the Earth by reflecting some of the sun's energy back into space. Tell us what they are. However, the wider consequences of SRM are poorly understood, with significant uncertainty around the possible risks and impacts of deployment. As such, the government's position is that it is not deploying SRM and has no plans in place to do so. The government acknowledges that the Advanced Research and Invention Agency, ARIA, an independent research agency sponsored by the Department for Science, Innovation and Technology, are funding some SRM research projects through their Exploring Climate Cooling programme. You see, first they've said that they're not doing it. Now they say that they're exploring. So they've contradicted themselves. They're now saying, yes, they are doing it. Some isn't none, some is some. So again, we see a slightly gaslighty aspect to this. And I think by now we've read all this, that we've forgotten what they said at the beginning. This research aims to begin gathering critical missing scientific data to better understand potential earth cooling approaches, conducting cautious, controlled research aimed at improving understanding of the risks and impacts associated with cooling technologies. The programme does not fund deployment. None of the approved ARIA projects involve the release of toxic materials to the environment. Oh, tell us that when we get really chemically smelling fog and loads of chemtrails in the sky. This research into cooling technologies in no way alleviates the urgent need for increased decarbonisation efforts. Department for energy security and net zero. Well, all I can say is this to me sounds like a complete load of codswallop. It is using big words, it's just making a statement without explaining anything at all, trying to blind us with science. It's all mouth and no trousers, so to speak. And clearly this seems to me heavily influenced by certain global organisations and political agendas, the madcap ideas of certain politicians, and also the interference of certain philanthropists who might be called, for example, Gil Bates, who every time he's paid a visit to the UK seems to be smiling as something else is rolled out to us, some other madcap idea. Well, this petition, believe it or not, and I do, has over 100,000 signatures. I will put up on the screen how many it currently has. The Petitions Committee will consider it for a debate. They can also gather further evidence and press the government for action. The committee is made up of 11 MPs from political parties in government and in opposition. It's entirely independent of the government. I don't believe that. Find out more about the committee and I'll put the link if you care to look at it. Signed by the Petitions team, House of Commons. But let me know your thoughts. And if you don't agree with all this interfering with Mother Nature, and I certainly don't, as I said, there are more the ways of man that need to be explored, going back to nature and dropping some of the high-tech machinery, the toys that seem to be favoured by certain tiny percentage of the world's society, then we ought to be writing to our MPs to voice our concerns, because if we don't do so, then we at least partly have ourselves to blame when things go horribly wrong. If you got to the end of this, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed hearing about the outcome of this petition and were interested in what the government had to say, please give it a like, comment, share, and please subscribe if you haven't already done so. It means a lot to me. Ding the notification bell and all that excellent stuff. And I will see you again soon for the next one. Until then, bye for now.